What what is up, everybody? This is Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. We're here for another episode of College Football Now. This is a big show. We'll have Brandyn Pokrass with us live talking Shula Bowl, and with him we'll have a special guest in Robbie Lastella. Later on, we have USF recap with Brandyn and Mackenzie Neglia of the League Winners. And after we do our little G5, G6 little break there, we go into the power rankings where we have a heavy hitters lineup of Joaquin Ruiz covering Cal for the Daily Cal. We have Daniel Totora of Wake Up Call DT talking Syracuse. We have Trevor Hammond talking Wisconsin. And of course, with us as always will be Brandyn Hay talking UCF, FSU, and overall P4 football. Now, actually, I have two guys waiting in the green room right now, so I'm going to introduce them. The first is, you know him, you love him. Always here with us covering Florida football, FAU, FIU, USF. It's the Pacman at BPOC24 on Twitter. Brandyn Pokrass, how you doing, brother?
The Pac, man, I haven't heard that one in a very long time. But, happy to be here as always. Another great week of football last week. We're definitely going to get into one of those matchups because might have been the game of the week, potentially game of the year in college football. Another great week ahead. So excited to get this thing rolling.
And that's a good segue for bringing in the other man who is in the green room right now covering Florida Atlantic football for New Era Prep and Inside the Borough with the FAU Owls Nest is Robbie Lastella. Robbie, how are you doing, brother?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me on. You nailed the intro there. I know it can be confusing with all different outlets, but I appreciate it. I'm happy to do it. It's a big week in the FAU-FIU world.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing better. You got it's kind of interesting because, both FAU and FIU took care of their FCS opponents, had a little bit more of a, handful with the P4 guys. And now they meet in week 3 at Pitbull Stadium in Miami. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. So actually, I want to go with Brandyn first. Brandyn, I'll have you covering the FIU side here, although you do cover both. But I want to know, going into this matchup, what is important for FIU to showcase that, they can hang? Because they have lost 7 straight in the Shula Bowl game. So I want to know, to the fans listening, they want to know as well what to expect from the FIU Panthers.
Well, I'll keep it simple and then expand from there. They have to continue to show the strengths that they've shown and then build on some key aspects that are going to be critical for them. So what does that mean for FIU? For FIU, that means the defense needs to continue to play at a high level, facing a very, very big challenge this week in the FAU offense, a scheme that's going to throw a ton at them with a ton of different formations, concepts, etc. They showed that they can hang with a team like Penn State for an extended period, right? They limited them to 10 points in that half. They had a really good game in week 1, but rivalry games are rivalry games for a reason, right? You have to continue to show that performance. You have to continue to show that you can compete at a high level, that you can handle all different types of schemes, and that's going to be critical. I think if you really want to key in on a specific unit, the FIU secondary is going to be massive in this game. They are going to be put in conflict a ton. They're going to be challenged a lot. They have the talent to compete with FAU. They have the talent to compete with the wideouts. How do they execute on the back end? That's going to be important. And then on offense, it's the trenches, right? If you've watched the first 2 FIU games, a large swath of them, a lot has been made of the run game. They need to continue to run the ball at a high level. And look, that's going to be a challenge. If there's one thing that FAU defense has excelled at this year, it's been the run defense. As Robbie has tweeted countless times about, that's been something where they've seriously thrived. If FIU really wants to get the upper hand quickly in this game, they need to rely on Kajan Owens. They need to rely on Anthony Carey. They need to rely on Devontae Lyons and ensure that their offensive line gets a push. And then that one thing that I think could put them over the edge, and we'll obviously talk about it a little bit more, if they hit some of their deep pass games. There's been a ton of plays over these first 2 weeks where they've just missed hitting the big play. They've just missed setting up that big play action shot. I mean, last week, the one that stands out to me, Keelan Jenkins lights out, throws one of the best balls you could possibly throw to an open receiver, and a Penn State defensive back makes a leaping play and breaks it up. That's the type of difference that can swing football games, no matter what opponent you're playing. So for them to really seal the victory, that pass game needs to take another step forward. And really that ties into how successful the run game is.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because this is probably the first time in a while where FIU is actually favored in the Shula Bowl, and this is actually the second matchup in a September game in the September Shula Bowl, and this might actually be the earliest matchup between these two teams. Robbie, going into this game, what can fans expect from the FAU Owls?
Yeah, well, after the first game, we weren't so sure what we'd get. In game two, it looked a little bit more like what a lot of people would expect. And obviously, that should have been the case playing against an FCS opponent. The offense should have been able to find its footing. And it did. They executed. They didn't turn. I had a couple keys for that game that I really wanted to see. They were some people said I was setting a high bar, but I'm like, it's an FCS team. I said 300 yards passing with no turnovers. I said 100 yards rushing with at least 4 yards per carry. And I said, get the first sack of the season. They did all three of those things. So those are some good positives heading into this next game. They need to keep doing that, though, right? You mentioned the pass rush that FIU will provide. That's going to speed things up for Caden Veldkamp a little bit. He's not going to have, as much time as he did. And the offense moves quick. He tries to hit his first read anyway, but he still had a little bit more cushion against FAMU. So things are going to be sped up a little bit. Chaney Jr. is the name, Johnny Chaney Jr. He played Assad Wasim was in the presser today. He played high school ball with him. So he identified that. That's a matchup that the offensive line is definitely going to have identify. But overall in this game, I definitely want to see the defensive side of the ball, continue to build on that run defense that Brandon mentioned that has been the strength for FAU. Najon Barber has been as good as advertised. Coastal Carolina transfer has been a stalwart up front. And they've been getting contributions from the linebackers as well, dropping in there. Hart Jr. and Stolsky have been solid, even against Maryland. So that's going to be big against FIU, right? They're going to have to continue that. And then if they're able to do that, getting that pass rush, they had 14 pressures against FAMU. They were only able to get home twice, though. If they can generate pressure and stop the run, I will find it hard pressed to see FIU keep up in this game with the offense that FAU would be able to provide if that's the case. But if they're not able to do that, the spread is what it is for a reason, and it could be a game. That run game for FIU has been good. And if they're able to get that going, their defense, especially that pass rush, has been good. So I'm interested for this game. There's a lot, last couple of years, even with how bad things got for FAU, it's always been, this game's going to be a blowout because it was even worse for FIU. The McIntyre era was a little bit dicey there. So I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys both kind of mentioned it. The trenches are going to play a very big role in this game. And we've all kind of talked about it, how the FAU, the Florida Atlantic defensive line, has to be able to stop the run, has to be able to force FIU into kind of a one-dimensional role. Brandon, I want to ask you, do you think that FIU is going to be able to pass the ball if they're not able to run the football against the Florida Atlantic defense?
I think it's one of those things where we haven't necessarily had a chance to fully see it yet. I think they can, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's that proof of concept thing.
Right.
That first game, FIU had 6 rushing touchdowns. All their touchdowns were on the ground. They got whatever they wanted on the ground. Now, that second game, the run game was strong, but you're dealing with one of the best defensive lines in the country in Penn State. So you have the wide end of the spectrum on both ends. How does a matchup against a comparable opponent force this offense or change what the offense does, right? What does, the FAU defensive scheme show maybe pre-snap or maybe adjust pre-snap where it's like, hey, maybe after the first or second drive, we're going to let this thing rip. We're going to let the passing game allow us to open up the run game. Maybe it completely flips the scheme. I'm just very interested to see it because I think this is going to be the first game, and Robbie alluded to it, where if things go a certain way, FIU is going to have to throw the ball. And they've shown the ability, whether it's in the spring or in the fall, to do so. They just haven't been pushed to that point yet for one way or the other.
Yeah, that's kind of what I want to see too. Now, Robbie, I want to ask you, because we did kind of see it against that Maryland game when they were able to get pressure home. FAU didn't really have an answer on the ground other than that one long Jamari Sands rush at the end of that first half. Do you think that if FIU is able to bring in pressure, that the Owls are going to be able to run the ball successfully against this defensive front?
Yeah, because even in that Maryland game, I think the run game kind of got stopped a little bit. The second half, they were down so much. They kind of put the run game aside a little bit more than they would. They still attacked the run, but it wasn't what we saw. I forgot what the number was, but I remember not being unhappy with what the yards per carry was, and that's really what I pay attention to. And against Maryland, that was good again, or against FAMU, that was good again. Sands looked good. But, honestly, I haven't dove too deep into the FIU run defense yet, but it's definitely going to be something to watch, considering there was times where it was stalled. And then when the runs did get stalled early on in that Maryland game for FAU, they kind of ruined the offense. They get set in 3rd and longs, and they were not good in 3rd and longs, and they were not good in 4th and longs either for that game, for that matter. So it's going to be important for them to get those early rushing yards. And if it's not the early rushing yards, the screens that I was not too fond of in that first game, that was just the first game. Whatever their mode of choice is to get those early yards, it's going to be important, because if they get into late down situations, that's where FIU's edge rushers are going to have fun, because Caden, when those long situations, if you hit that first read, you're going to pass short of the sticks. And unless you're making a play, it's 4th down. So that's the key to me, is getting out of those, anything. Don't get to 3rd and 6 plus. If you get to that situation, FIU's edge rushers are going to get into play, and then things could get dicey. So do I think they're going to be able to run the ball? Yes, but it's a matter of when they get stopped, 2nd down can't be a busted play either. So it's not going to be perfect. I mean, it's not like they're playing the FIU team a couple of years ago when Butch Jones was still getting, or who was their coach? Whoever their coach was before McIntyre, they're getting jerseys for free and practice equipment and whatnot. This is a real FIU football team with real athletes on both sides of the ball. Willie Simmons has done a great job recruiting there, and this game should be fairly even. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, Kevin comes in and says that it was Butch Davis.
Thank you.
Comes in. Appreciate you chiming in there, Kevin. Yeah, and I completely agree. And we've kind of seen how Zach Kittley is not really afraid to, even in those long situations, to kind of risk it for the biscuit, for lack of a better term. He is not afraid to go for it. And it kind of makes this an important game, though Kittley seems to have somewhat downplayed the rivalry in his conversations with the media. Do you think that's the right way to approach this matchup, or do you think that he should kind of lean into it a little bit more?
Well, I think he's right where he should be at, right? You don't want to be too over into it. You want to have some type of passion for it, and I think he's expressed that. He mentioned he's not naive. He knows the importance of this game, but at the same time, this is an early season game. I mean, there's still a ton of new players on this team, and you know what you're going to get for the most part, but still, you present this situation as, yeah, we got to go beat this team from down south. I mean, I sound like I'm imitating Willie Simmons, but I'm not. I swear. I actually liked his energy with it too, because it's good either way, in my opinion. But you got to focus on it game by game, because you don't know how your players are going to accept that. That could turn into the wrong thing. Last year, for example, there were plays last year where FAU got late hit penalties and whatnot. So I think really, this game is going to come down. What did he say? Oh, come on, man. I told you I'm not making fun of Willie. Like I said, I really like his approach with it, but that's something to watch too, as well, is whether or not how Kittley's approaching it, there's still going to be some animosity. These guys, know each other from high school, and even in college, a bunch of these guys played last year. I think FAU only had 9 players that played in last year's game on the roster, which is surprisingly low. But maybe there's some kerfuffles and whatnot, and then those extra penalty yards in a game like this could matter. So that's something else to keep an eye on from that perspective. But I do actually enjoy the rivalry. I think I've said this for years now. Why can't we have 2 rivalries, right? I mean, the USF rivalry is not where the FIU rivalry is by any stretch of the matter. There's still people on both sides that are like, that's not a rivalry. So embrace the one you have, enjoy it. If Kittley wants to take it by game approach, that's fine. And if Willie Simmons wants to amp it up, That's also fine. I'm here for it. I mean, I love that type of stuff. I love sports for stupid reasons. I love baseball because the manager can get tossed and scream at the umpire. So I'm here for all the extra stuff. And so, but yeah, I'm interested to see kind of how those little type of relationships kind of matter in this game. Like Assad mentioned, he knows Johnny Chaney Jr. They played high school ball together, and I'm sure there's more guys that didn't play at Apopka. They played in Miami together, and so it's going to get interesting for sure.
Yeah, that kind of it's just interesting, as you said, because all these guys have played together, and they do have a lot of familiarity, even if it's just 9 players returning. A lot of people just it goes deeper than just the football teams. It goes into the community. I think, as you said, Willie Simmons kind of played into it a bit more. Brandyn, what are your thoughts into that, and how do you see FIU approaching this matchup?
Look, at the end of the day, I don't think there's a wrong way to approach a rivalry game. It's a rivalry game for a reason. But I think when you look at it from the FIU side of things, there should be that motivation there. I mean, it's been a long time since FIU's won in this rivalry. And look, no matter what opponent they've faced, FIU has come out flying out of the gates in the first 2 weeks, right? You have a team that has been consistently ready to play. You have a team that's been consistently ready to compete with whoever's on the sideline. That's been a trademark of Willie Simmons, right? It doesn't matter who's across on the other side of the field. They believe internally that if they do the right thing, if they do what they're supposed to do, they can compete against anyone. And, I think you started to see that proof of concept, especially in that first half against Penn State. Was it perfect? No, of course not, right? There's always going to be a mistake here or a mistake there, but you started to see that proof of concept of what that belief is in that building. And I think, carrying over to the Shula Bowl, you're going to see a very motivated FIU team. You are going to see a team that is ready to fly around, that's ready to make a statement in this rivalry. They are hungry for it. You could sense it from some of the players today. You could sense it from, Coach Willie Simmons. Like, they really want to make their mark in this rivalry. And I think a big thing that a lot of people should remember when looking at this is, yes, there's been a history of these schools. There's been a history of these teams. This is year 1 for Kitley, and this is year 1 for Simmons. This is essentially brand new for these coaching staffs. And they're going to approach it in their own way. But I will say this, and this is my belief. I think you can say whatever to the media, however you want to approach it. I think when it comes game time, both teams are going to be ready to play this game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And before we kind of get to this next segment and we see Robbie out of here, Brandyn, I want to hear what your prediction is for this game. Who wins?
Oh, I think it's going to be a battle. I think this is a coin flip game. I think if you look at the spread dictates that. And I had the same thought process. We're shifting to an NFL, bit of a tangent, but it ties into what I'm saying. I looked at Jets Steelers last week, as I almost knocked my phone off my laptop. I looked at Jets Steelers last week, and I felt the teams were even. I felt that both teams complemented their strengths and weaknesses with each other. I went with the home team and said the Jets would win in a close one. The Jets lost by a field goal. So I take that same proof of concept and I look at it like this. These are two very, very similar football teams. I'm a big fan of both head coaches. I'm a big fan of both rosters. I think both teams are on the right trajectory. I'm going with the home team in a coin flip game. And guess what? If FAU wins this one, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. I think it's going to be a great Shula Bowl in 2025.
All right, Robbie, I'm going to ask you the same question. How do you see this matchup playing out in the Shula Bowl for week 3?
Well, man, respect to both fan bases here, but I just can't do the home field advantage for either side, right? There is a good. I've seen FIU. I've never been to FIU. I almost went last year, but I got my tire blown out on the side of the highway. But this is not like they're not going in the Death Valley, and it's like if FIU is coming up here, they're not going into Tuscaloosa. The home environments to me aren't the most daunting factors. I wish they were. I liked the student section for FAU this week. They were solid. Work to be done for the old people that don't go to the games. But anyway, I don't think that should be. Respect to you, Brandyn, for your choice. I'm just not big into the home field advantage in this matchup. But I agree it'll be a tightly contested battle. I do see FAU winning this game. because their run defense has been good, and it was good against Maryland. It's not like they just stymied FAMU. They were solid against Maryland as well. And so if they're able to do that again, now I'm going to hinge it on that. If they're not able to stop the run, I think FIU wins this game. I will say that right now. If they're able to stop the run and force the game into Kewan Jenkins' hands, I think the defense this year is better than last year's. It's still early to say that, but we saw last year's defense was able to frustrate Kewan a little bit. It's two different teams, two different coordinators. I know. But I think if it gets to that situation, I think FAU wins the game. I think if they can shut down the run game, I think FAU's offense will be able to outpace FIU's. But that's the big thing. So I'll take FAU in this game if they're able to stop the run. If they're not able to stop the run, give me FIU. But I think they'll be able to stop the run. So my pick is FAU.
Yeah, it truly is like a coin flip kind of game. It'll be very interesting to see. It's one of the games that I actually have. I know there's a lot bigger matchups going into this weekend, but that's just a very interesting game given the potential trajectories of that going forward. So, hey, Robbie, I do appreciate you coming on. Can you just let everybody know where they can find you on your social media and your publications before you go?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. My Twitter is Lastella Report. I'll have some free week stuff going out on New Era Prep this week. And I do the podcast Inside the Burrow for FAU Owl's Nest. So I spit some knowledge on there. And most of my written work now is for New Era Prep. So I appreciate that. And looking forward, you guys coming down. And I know, Brandon, you'll be in Sweetwater this week. But Tom I remember you said you might think about it. You're coming?
Yeah, I'll be down. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys there then. Let's go. I'm hoping Kevin in the comments. I'll see you there too. Don't worry.
Thanks, Robbie. Take care, man. That is Robbie Lastella. Make sure you guys follow him at X/Twitter at R Lastella, Lastella report. It is spelt how it sounds. Now we do have somebody being very patient in the backstage with us. You guys know her, you love her. It's Mackenzie Neglia covering USF Bulls. Mackenzie, how are you doing?
I'm good. Always happy to talk some USF football with you guys. It's been a big 2 weeks for them.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. First, I just want to get your opinions. How as somebody who goes to the university, how excited were you seeing the way that last week's game developed?
It was definitely a very memorable experience for the school. First time in history of beating UF, but I think it really means a lot to the football team. It means a lot to the student body, everybody as a whole, that they really come out and support the team every year, and just the trajectory that they're on right now has been really special for sure.
Yeah, it's been incredible to see, and now USF becomes the first team to beat every single Florida team in their home stadium. I believe 42 or 45, some 40-ish teams have tried. They have all failed, but the Bulls did not. And Brandon, you were actually at the Swamp, being able to see that. Can you just talk about that experience? What was the atmosphere like? And how were those players playing under the duress of 90,000 fans screaming their head off?
I think a lot of people don't understand what an environment like that is, right? Like, you play it on the video game, you play it, in different scenarios. Like, you see it on TV and you're like, wow, that looks insane. And then you go there, and I think when we talked earlier this past weekend, I think I explained it to you as like, I called it real football, or like I said, that's football. Because it feels like in its most like pure form, that's what the sport is all about, in terms of the community, in terms of what it means to a community, in terms of like what a stadium environment and game day environment is supposed to be. Now, in the stadium, University of Florida has an open press box. So there is no window there. There is nothing blocking you from seeing the field action, which is awesome. However, you are also feeling the full brunt of 90,000 fans chanting and screaming all at the same time. So if you are not good under pressure in terms of concentrating with basically feeling like the ground shaking underneath your feet, would recommend you bring some earplugs if you're covering a game there. But in all seriousness, amazing environment, just amazing experience getting to cover a game there. And, you know, to USF's credit, they were so prepared once again. There really wasn't that many, you know, pre-snap penalties, you know, self-inflicted wounds. They were prepared. They executed for the most part. And look, at the end of the day, they got the job done. Ironically, the team who had the environment on their side made more miscues and shot themselves in the foot more times. And when push came to shove, when it's that final drive, really swung the pendulum in USF's favor between one of the dumbest personal foul penalties you could ever get in spitting on a player and some of the worst clock management you will ever see from any head coach in Florida's Billy Napier. So yeah, that kind of sums up the experience.
Do we know if that player got suspended or anything yet?
He issued an apology. I do not know about a suspension at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that stuff at all. Mackenzie, you were actually at, you know, the pressers with Coach Golish. Can you just let fans know what his message was as they head into this massive Week 3 matchup against Miami?
Yeah, I mean, the focus kind of remains the same of, you know, taking it week by week. And one of the big aspects of playing at Florida was the environment, as Brandon was saying, and how, you know, being able to handle the travel, being able to focus through the noise, and that really has stood out to them as being able to execute well in those kinds of situations. So
yeah, it is huge because I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought that the Swamp was gonna be almost too hard of a place to play in just because of like we just talked about 90,000 people building, shaking. It is very high intensity, high pressure situation, and they managed to do it. And a lot of that, I think, is through the leadership of Golish. I think it is doing a great job there as the head coach. Now, Brandon, I don't think that the home field advantage for Miami is going to be the same as it is at UF. But what are you looking forward to in this matchup, and what does USF have to do in order to come out of Week 3 in an unprecedented 3-0?
Well, as I said last week, I didn't expect them to win the Florida one, but I said I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm not that surprised that they competed in terms of them getting that win. You know, now you're playing with house money. You truly are, because looking at it from a college football playoff perspective, which, holy crap, didn't expect to be referencing USF and college football playoff, but here we are. It really doesn't hurt you because you already have the 2 ranked wins. But man, where do I start with this matchup? I think on the offensive end, it's the offensive line, because you got Akeem Messidor and you got Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain might be the best player in college football so far, period. Doesn't matter what position, doesn't matter what side of the ball. He has been incredible. He is healthy again. He is an absolute menace in stopping the run, and he's one of the best, if not the best, pass rusher in college football. And the problem that USF is going to face is, in a normal situation, you would just shift a lot of your protection over there. Here's the problem. Akeem Messidor is pretty damn good too. So for a USF offensive line that, against a very talented Florida defensive line, actually held up really well, I'm fascinated to see what A, the scheme looks like in terms of how they negate some of that pressure, and B, how the performance of a player like Cole Best looks, because he's been one of the best pass blocking centers in the entire country throughout 2 weeks. So that is critically important. How do the wide receivers attack this secondary, who I feel a bit worse about Miami's secondary than Florida's, but that doesn't mean it's any less talented. Can Keyshawn Singleton, can the freshman Christian Neptune, who this staff is very high on, as Coach Alex Golish spoke about after the game, can Chaz Nimrod, can Medea Rubin, can a tight end like Wyatt Sullivan, can these guys make the impact necessary and allow Byron Brown to have his targets? And then Byron Brown himself, right? Yeah. What can he do in terms of escaping pressure, keeping plays alive? Because if he does the things that he's been doing the past 2 weeks, you know, that have put him back potentially on the NFL draft radar, that have really allowed USF to win these games, USF is going to have more than a puncher's chance. They might have a great chance. And then it comes back to the defense. They have to heat up Carson Beck. The linebackers have been great. The secondary has been great. But at the end of the day, this is a different beast than DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway is a phenomenal player, and Florida wants to showcase that. So playing over the top, playing great defense in terms of limiting the explosives, it allows you to play a very grinded out and basically turn the game into a rock fight, which it ended up becoming. Carson Beck thrives in that. Carson Beck is a guy that can sit in that pocket and dissect it. Look at it when Georgia won the national championship. The reason he was so damn good is because that offensive line allowed him to just pick apart every single defense, no matter what. And this offensive line for Miami is very talented and 1,000% has the ability to do so. So I think when it comes down to it, no matter how good the likes of Mac Harris, Jalen Shuler, Deshaun Rucker, Jonas DeCluna, I don't care, anyone in the secondary. If the quarterback has too much time, any secondary, any linebacker is going to have problems. USF has to get pressure, and they have to stop the run in this one, because if they put Miami behind the sticks, they're going to be able to force them into a game that they do not want to play.
Yeah, I think that's the hope for the Bulls, especially since we kind of saw Notre Dame do it a little bit in that first matchup. It was just, I don't think that the secondary was as aggressive as they could have been. Seeing a lot of balls just waiting for it instead of attacking. I don't think USF will be waiting for too many of those. I think they will be attacking there, especially, we got Mac Harris, a linebacker. He's been off to a tremendous start this year, and hopefully he can continue that too. You hit the nail on the head. I think it is kind of forcing Beck to make those plays under duress and forcing the Miami wide receivers to step up. It's going to be tough, especially against a USF defense that has been true. It has been gritty. Now, Mackenzie, last question for you. Like, I know we've all talked. I know we all didn't expect USF to do this well as they have, and they have. They're coming out 2-0. What are your predictions in this game, and do you think they're able to come out with a win?
This one's tough. I think that they will put up a fighting chance against Miami, but I don't think that they come out on top of this one. But with everything that they did against Florida, against Boise, you can't count them out for this.
No, I don't think you can either. And that is very tough to do. I hope that they win, because it would be great. I'm an upset kind of guy, not rooting against any team. I love upsets. But Miami is now ranked number 5 for a reason, so it'll be interesting to see if they can get out of here. Now, Mackenzie, before you go, can you just let everyone know where they can find you at on your social media?
Yeah, all of my USF content is on my X, so it's at my first and last name, Mackenzie Neglia.
Awesome. Perfect. Mackenzie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course, I appreciate y'all. Have a good night.
And that is Mackenzie Neglia. You can find her on X/Twitter at Mackenzie, MacKenzie, and Neglia, it's Neglia. And Brandon, before I get you right out of here, I just need to know, man, you think they're winning this game, or do you think they end up coming out 2-1?
It's so tough because I'll ask you, do I stick with my guns with what I said last week, or do I change? Because I okay. You know what? Screw it. I said last week that I thought Miami was the more winnable game, and then USF proceeded to beat Florida. So you know what? We're going to throw the gauntlet down here. Analysis be damned. No, I'm kidding. But I truly think that USF is Boise State from last year, but I guess in a bit of a different mold. I think this is going to be a team that surprised a lot of people, and I think this is a team that can pull off the impossible. The impossible being what the outside world thinks. If you talk to players on that roster, if you talk to head coach Alex Golish, they believe. They've believed this entire time. I've remembered talking to you about it after the spring game. They talked about how important it was to take that next step and how they had that belief and that they had to show it. Well, they've shown it through 2 weeks, and I think Todd Orlando, the defensive coordinator, is going to bring a very good game plan. I think you're going to see different unique blitzes and pressures to heat up Carson Beck, and I'm going to put my stamp on it. This is going to be the Byron Brown game. The past 2 games have technically been the Byron Brown game, but I think this is going to be the Byron Brown game through the air. I think he's going to get the job done, and I think USF wins by a score of 24-20.
I don't hate that. I'm very interested to see if that USF passing game really like takes off because they do have a lot of guys that I think the average fan is not aware of yet. That offense has a lot of dimensions to it, which they haven't really been able to show yet, considering how tough the schedule's been. Maybe they get to do it this week against Miami. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. Can you just let everybody know where they can find you on your social media before you get out of here?
Of course, but before I get to that, I have one more thing I want to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to do the thing you did to me. If USF wins this game, are they the number 1 team in the country?
Man, that's tough. I think you would have to say yes. I mean, just logistically speaking, because you beat Boise ranked 25. Yeah, I think they were 25, 24, 25.
They were 25. It'd be 13, and then it'd be 5.
Yeah, I don't see anybody with a better resume.
You have those 3 wins on the resume. No one in college football has played that schedule yet. If they're not 1, they're 2. Period.
Yeah, I mean I'm assuming Ohio State wins. Penn State had some issues with FIU. You know, everybody else in that top 10 has had some issues. Really, other than Miami, which kind of put in work against Notre Dame and then put in work last week. Granted, that was against small school still. I think if they do win, yeah, man, I'd probably put them number 2 behind Ohio State. Yeah,
like
you couldn't go wrong.
It's 1, 2, or maybe 3 if LSU beats Florida this week.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I see that. If LSU beats Florida, I think it'd be Ohio State, LSU, and then USF, and I don't think you could go wrong wherever you place any 3 of those teams at this point. I would, for chaos sake, I would love to see USF win and just be the number 1 because I think it would break a lot of people's brains. And that's the kind of chaos that I love for college football. That's why I love college football.
And then that would tie in perfectly because announced today, the USF athletic department hired their first CEO of athletics, and Rob Higgins. Rob Higgins has brought a lot of big things to the Tampa area in terms of different events. Maybe the next thing that would happen is USF moving the P4. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe
about it, man. That would be crazy. And it would line up with a lot of things too. Give him a yearish and a half to prepare, depending on when he's officially signed in and everything. If he's not already, it gives him time to set stuff up. Like there's a lot of wiggle room there that you gotta like it and be excited about if you're a Bulls fan. So the future is looking very bright in Tampa.
Yep, but to wrap up the question that you asked me earlier, you guys can find me on social media, Instagram and Twitter at BPOC24. You can also find me at Blue Sky at Brandyn-Pokrass at BSky. That is BSKY-social. Thank you for having me on once again, Thomas. Really looking forward to seeing you this weekend and coming on this podcast again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It'll be fun to catch up, go down in Florida, and hopefully I may have to make sure to bring a few pairs of extra clothes because that Florida weather is no joke. Brandon, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you, man. Bye.
Have a great one.
You too, brother. That is Brandyn Pokrass of the League Winners, who is our correspondent, East Coast correspondent. He also helps cover the Florida Atlantic Owls and the FIU Panthers, which you saw in the earlier portion of the show. He also covers the USF Bulls, as we just mentioned as well. Just a second ago. So now we're kind of going to maintain with the G5, G6 right now. And we have to discuss the one other team that we do cover, and that is the Delaware Blue Hens. Delaware actually played Colorado in week 2, and they performed, admirably in the first half, in a very similar regard as FIU did with Penn State. A little bit different because they did give up 17, but the score was actually 17-7 in the first half of that game before Colorado scored 2 touchdowns in the second half of that game. Nick Minicucci went 18 of 36, 50% completion percentage. I'm sure he wants to be better there, but he did throw for 312, a touchdown and a pick. Running the ball, Joe Silver, I mentioned him as a key player actually in the pregame to this matchup. He did not perform as well as I thought he would have. Kind of forced him to be a little bit one-dimensional. He went 11 rushes for 47 yards on a 4.3 average. Hey, man, Jake Thaw, shout out to Jake Thaw. Really big fan of him. If you guys didn't see, he actually put a Colorado defender in a blender, quote unquote. That's how Conference USA is actually using their caption for that tweet, where he had a monster gain. He actually ended up having 4 catches for 85 yards. Jake Thaw, a graduate player. He's actually an amazing player, wide receiver for the Delaware Blue Hens. Make sure you guys are keeping an eye on him. Going forward, in KTCA, who actually had a big game against Delaware State, also performed well against Colorado, had some coverage issues, but he did lead the team with 5 tackles. Now, as Delaware enters week 3, they face a UConn Huskies team that just lost a brutal overtime game, 27-20. To the Syracuse Orange in week 2. I was actually in attendance for that game. Now this week, UConn is actually facing the Delaware Blue Hens, and they would be traveling to Delaware to take them on. Joe Fagnano, he performed well in week 2, but when push came to shove and the running game stopped working, he wasn't necessarily able to excel outside of throwing to the one and only Skylar Bell, wide receiver for UConn Huskies. Made an incredible play on a 4th down, bobble acrobatic catch, kept UConn's game alive, and actually helped lead them to the game-tying field goal against Syracuse in week 2. Now they're going to, I'm not sure who's going to be able to cover Skylar Bell for Delaware in this matchup. So that is something to very much keep an eye on. Also, Cam Edwards for the UConn Huskies. He is somebody to very much keep an eye on as well. The UConn rushing attack is something that a lot of teams can't stop. Surprisingly, Syracuse did have some success there. But like I said, Cam Edwards did do well, as did Mel Brown. Mel Brown is probably the more underrated one. Cam had 21 rushes for 75 yards, but Mel Brown had 5 for 72 and the touchdown, and that included a 40-plus yard run. Now, I don't know if Delaware has the guys inside to necessarily stop that matchup, as Don Brogna is along the interior. Might be a key guy that I'm focusing on in this game. Regardless, we got to look for this UConn offense. I think that they're going to be a little bit too much to handle, or too much for the Delaware Blue Hens to handle. If you guys want to keep an update on our game preview, our own correspondent for UConn Huskies, Chase Coburn, is going to have that pregame available this week, where he does cover the UConn Huskies and the Delaware Blue Hens. I also want to give a shout out to the UNLV Rebels and Brandon Steele, one of our correspondents who does cover UNLV. They ended up beating UCLA in week 2. They are now 3-0. If you remember that they did have a game in week 0. They do not have a game in week 3. They are on their bye week, which is a great time for them to have it, especially after beating a Big Ten team. The Dan Mullen era is going great for the UNLV Rebels, especially after last season. They performed well. There is no hitch in their giddy up. I know people were scared, a little bit concerned with that Idaho State game in week 0, but that's why I really try hard not to let one week kind of put somebody in their grave and decide their future for them. But they did make an announcement. UNLV has announced a home and home series with James Madison University. That is today. They announced that today. It starts in 2027, and I believe it runs into 2030, where they do have a home and home against the James Madison Dukes, which unfortunately they did lose that close game to the Louisville Cardinals this past week. They also have a bye week in week 3, and that is before they have their own tough matchup there. The James Madison Dukes, it's under Bob Chesney. It's really interesting to see how that goes going forward. Alonzo Barnett originally tore his ACL. They didn't think that he was going to be ready to play to start the season. That's why they went out and got Matthew Silka. They went out and also got another experienced veteran behind him. But it turns out Alonzo Barnett was ready, And that has made things a little bit complicated. Bob Chesney's been playing quarterback and quarterback for every drive, and it has kind of taken guys out of their rhythm. We've seen Alonzo Barnett miss some key throws that he normally would have made. There was a 4th down play where he had his receiver wide open and just sailed it out of bounds. Normally, you don't see that out of Barnett. He ended up going 15 of 25, only 102 yards passing, 1 passing touchdown. Sluka won 3 of 5, 35 yards. He did throw an interception. He also rushed 21 times, 83 yards, and threw a touchdown. And rushed for a touchdown. This week, I believe they played Liberty in a Sun Belt matchup. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any shifts, any changes as they come out of their bye week. It's going to be interesting to see if Sluka gets the nod going forward, or if they're going to give it to Alonzo Barnett, who was their starter last year before he got injured in that game. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Be very interesting to keep an eye on as we get deeper into the season to see how that James Madison team breaks out, honestly, because they're a great coach team. Bob Chesney is a fantastic head coach. Big fan of Bob Chesney over here. And before we get to our next break, we're going to take a brief intermission. And as we end this G5 segment, we're going to go into the P4. With me joining that's going to be Joaquin Ruiz, covering Cal for the Daily Cal. We have Daniel Totore from Wake Up Call DT for Syracuse. We have Trevor Hammond covering Wisconsin. And then we have Brandon Hay doing P4 with us. We also have some blurbs from our staff that are going to be mentioned in here. But hey, while you guys are listening, please make sure to like the show on whatever platform you're on. Leave a comment if you want to do so. We always try to get to those during the live segment of the show. We do appreciate the comments. Most importantly, subscribe and share the channel wherever you're watching it. If it's on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, make sure you guys are sharing, commenting, liking, and subscribing. Everything helps the channel. It's completely free to do that. So before we get on to the next segment of our show, we will take a very, very brief intermission. So stay tuned. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. We are back for our second segment of College Football Now. This is the League Winners official college football podcast, where we will be coming to you every week from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time every Tuesday. I'll either be live here at the office or somewhere else. We'll be bringing in live reporters who cover their teams on site, on location. So you are getting strict beat reporters on the show, guys who know what they're talking about. And it'll come to you every night, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. We have a litany of schools, whether it's from the G5 to the G6 to the P4, since they do not consider the Pac-12 a power program anymore. The G6 to the P4. We also cover FCS schools where we have updates on them on occasion between the Monmouth Hawks and the U-Albany Great Danes. Shout out there. And we have a great second half of the slate. Joining us will actually be Joaquin Ruiz covering the California Golden Bears, Daily Cal, and I believe he may be in the green room. At 9 o'clock, top of the hour, we have Daniel Totora from Wake Up Call DT covering the Syracuse Orange. We'll be talking that matchup against Colgate and that historic rivalry there. 9:20, we have Trevor Hammond coming in and talking the Wisconsin Badgers as they get ready to face Alabama. And we have Brandon Hay, who will be joining us to talk UCF, FSU, and some P4 football. But right now I'm going to bring him into the room. He works for the Daily Cal, covering the Cal Golden Bears. He's also part of the Bear Avengers podcast. We have Joaquin Ruiz. Joaquin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I love just getting to share what I do and cover the Golden Bears, and I appreciate every opportunity. So thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do kind of want to open with this because I don't think too many people had Cal starting the season the way they started. No one's expected Jaron to perform the way he's performed as a true freshman, even jumping Devin Brown, because I know the consensus was that a lot of people thought Devin was going to start over him. It wasn't the case. Justin Wilcox kind of pulled the rug out from everybody, and this looked like the right decision so far. Now Cal's entering this week 3 matchup 2-0. What are your thoughts about Cal going into this matchup? Are you surprised that they're going into this matchup undefeated? And what are your expectations?
Personally, I'm not surprised they're undefeated, but kind of like you hinted, like I'm more surprised at the process. Like going into this season, especially over what we've seen, limited media opportunities during the spring and summer and fall. I thought it would be Devin Brown kind of manning the ship, but like you mentioned, Jaron's taken that job as a true freshman, and he's really ran with it. In the past 2 weeks, I think we've seen a Cal team that, the way I kind of describe them to people is, I think they lost that maybe the big names or the star power, but they got decent across the board. And maybe that's because some NIL funds were freed up this offseason, losing guys like Jack Andrews and Jaden Ott, Fernando Mendoza, or for whatever reason. But this team, I think, is very solid across the board. They obviously miss their NFL guys now, like Teddy Buchanan and Craig Woodson, who are making plays and on Sundays now. And but in the same breath, this Cal team is very competent across the board. And it's really impressive for a team that really, really, really had like a nightmare offseason in terms of who they lost. But I think who they added is probably better. So it's just a really good vibe going into week 3. And Cal is really feeling good about themselves internally.
Yeah, and I think Ron Rivera kind of spoke about it too during the offseason. Is he heard all the outside noise, and he kind of was the calming presence, I guess, so to speak, or more of an enforcing presence, I guess, knowing Ron. And he kind of told people that this program is not going to be, the program of the past. Is going to be something that everybody's going to know and want to play for the Cal Golden Bears. And I think he's kind of shown that so far. I mean, just look at the way, just from an advertising perspective too, right? And after Jaron's big game, you have his face plastered everywhere. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people expected to have that quickly. So he's really doing a great job manning the ship, and not just what's on the field, but what's off the field, which I think is equally important. Cal has had some attendance issues in the past. Do you think that continues into this year as they're building this program? And what do you think is the attendance is going to be like in this matchup against Minnesota?
Well, regarding Saturday, I think there will be a very strong turnout. Students always love night games. You get a chance to do whatever you got to do, whether it's grab a bite, get drunk, whatever you got to do. You can arrive at 7:30 and have a good time. But in terms of the long run, I always think back to Field of Dreams, a favorite movie of mine, which many don't know, but the main character, Ray Kinsula, in that movie is a Cal alum in that movie. So it's all kind of fitting. And for Cal, I think it's very similar. Like if you build it, if you win in this case, they'll come. And you mentioned Ron. The minute Jaron is a national sensation, you see, boom, billboards in Hawaii. And I know that's a part of because of the donors and him and just the overall administrative position that the program is in right now. But in terms of this Saturday, yeah, I think the energy is in the air. Cal is 2-0. And, to those who follow collegiate sports and just sports in general, like us, Texas Southern wasn't the strongest opponent, but to the average fan, to the average student, 2-0 is 2-0. And the team coming in is 2-0. Who cares if they won 6-0 over Northwestern State? Minnesota's undefeated. So Cal, I think they have a good thing going right now. And this is like a big test. It's kind of the word that's been going around this week. Test, barometer is another word. And Minnesota poses a really good threat. And a good team that is very gritty, physical, and it kind of reminds me of what Wilcox has tried to have this program be in recent years. It hasn't necessarily worked out. Cal's now potentially like an offensive team, so who knows how that looks. But I think Cal and Minnesota this Saturday should be a really good game, and if they win, then it gets into talk like, could Cal maybe be ranked or what's going on? And then San Diego State's a win after. Like if that's the case there, like 4-0, it's a lot hinging on this Saturday.
Yeah, and I think test was a great word because it will be a test. Minnesota's defense, probably one of the better defenses in college football right now. I know on the Kelly Ford ratings, they're actually ranked third behind Texas and Ohio State, which is heavy praise for the Golden Gophers. How do you, I feel like Cal's almost offense is almost like, guys are gonna hit you by attrition. It's a lot of good depth guys. I know people weren't really expecting Tron Grizzle to be the main guy there. Jacob DeJesus is obviously fantastic from UNLV, the Rebels, but you kind of have this, I don't want to say makeshift running back room, but after Jaden left, after Jet left, and a few others down the list ended up going, it's kind of been a bunch of, I don't want to say no names because that's disrespectful to them, but from a national presence, a lot of unheralded guys. Do you think that they're able to come together and really put Minnesota's defense on its heels?
Yeah, the other day I wrote an article about the new running back room because the average fan, especially in Berkeley, is like, who are these guys? And funny enough, the Cal running back coach, Julian Griffin, liked the article and gave me a follow. And the article was basically about how they don't need a starting running back. Cal didn't reveal one on its initial depth chart to start the season, and it's kind of been like that ever since. Week 1, Brandon High got the first snap of the game. Then we saw LJ Johnson kind of get some of the maybe short yardage gains, and then Kendrick Raphael got everything in between. And then this past Saturday, you saw Kendrick Raphael break free for 100 yards, a score. He kind of had his welcome to Berkeley moment. So this running back room really is kind of makeshift. It reminds me of there's like a Raiders team a few years ago that kind of had like a running back by committee. And that kind of is what Cal's doing right now. Because yes, the past 2 seasons, you've had that Jaden Ott, Javian Thomas combo that's really did well for the Bears, but health. Ott, was banged up a lot, and Jet too is a lot for him, kind of like a number 2 running back to be that number 1 unofficially. This time around, it's like 3 seasoned vets who are sharing the load, and in Brian Harson's ground and pound kind of professional type of offense, I think it really bodes well for everyone. And then you mentioned Jaron kind of throwing a wrench and everything in a good way because his arm just opens up so much. So if you're running it first and second down, that play action really can be a real threat, and we've seen it anytime Jaron has time, he gets the ball down there. Now, I do want to say the receivers, Jacob DeJesus kind of aside, Jaron does need some help in the passing game. Some receivers have been dropping passes that they usually make. Grizel dropped the touchdown against Texas Southern. Mark Hamper dropped a few. Even Keon Grays against Oregon State had a big drop. But, I mean, the passes are getting there. So, Cal, they have the skill players. And like you said, they're not like the biggest names, but they're serviceable, and they're doing their job so far. And I think they put Cal in a great position to hit 3-0.
Right. And I'd almost feel like at times you don't necessarily need the big names because it's all about guys who are buying into what's being sold to them. Right. And if the coaches are doing their job schematically and putting guys in a position where they not only believe in what's being said, but they're in the position to do it and they're seeing that themselves, I think that goes a long way. It's where if you don't have a, as you allude to, like they don't really have a main running back, a workhorse guy, but you don't really need one if everybody in the committee is doing their job and the yards are being made. So that's what's going to be interesting. And trying to stop them is Maverick Baranowski. He's the Mike linebacker for Minnesota. He's really good. He has a 92 PFF grade, and Garrison Monroe's the safety there. So those guys will be big in trying to stop the Cal offense. Now I want to switch to the Cal defense because if I'm not mistaken, Kedu Luluave is not going to be in the first half of this game. Can you talk about what his absence means in the defense and who's projected to step up?
Yeah, his absence will sting, definitely, for sure. He had a targeting penalty that, as the team captain, which he is, that was a play that he shouldn't have made. The game is well in Cal's control, and he was just kind of trying to hit someone, so it seemed. So that was uncalled for. And then in terms of who's stepping in for him, redshirt freshman Luke Farelli actually finished that game with the team high 11 tackles. He's been a baller the whole offseason. He's got the starting nod. He surprised a lot of people by getting the starting nod over a BYU transfer, Harrison Taggart, who was right behind Isaiah Glasgow in terms of leading tackles over there. And then Boom Jock from Colorado State, another guy who's serviceable. This redshirt freshman, Luke Farelli, who's from San Diego, who Cal will play in a few weeks, he's really broken out, and he will be that guy to step in lieu of Cade, his absence there. But this linebacker room is honestly one of the deeper positions on the team. So yes, like Cade's absence will sting the defense, and you always want that guy on the field. It is the position where Cal can maybe even see what they have more than they would on the usual week. So, but yeah, Minnesota is definitely going to target Farelli early. I think it's the smart thing to do. See what this redshirt freshman can do. But at the same time, he's shown that he can handle it.
Yeah, a lot of people were surprised for early, and I think Wilcox was even a little. He was a little aggressive in his response to people questioning it. But I think if he's seeing the guy in Wilcox, I mean, say what you want about him, he is a defensive guru. At least in terms of getting guys to the NFL level, especially that linebacker position that we're seeing with Teddy, and now Cade is projected to be one as well. Farley could be the next in line as a great Cal linebacker, and they're going to be tested. Darius Taylor comes in, and Grant Washington has actually been running really well for Minnesota too. How do you think that defensive line of Cal is going to hold in this matchup? Because stopping the run is going to be probably the number one priority.
Yeah, well, Cal, one of their edge rushers, kind of behind the starter and Ryan McCullough, TJ Bush, the Liberty transfer, he kind of talked about it today at Cal's press conference or banner, that they just have to stay disciplined because this is a run-heavy offense. That's at least what Minnesota wants to try and do. But we saw against Texas Southern, who Cal was supposed to beat by 50 plus or 45 plus, that Cal was undisciplined. And what I mean by that is, especially on pass plays, they would just fly upfield. And, on paper, it's like, oh, you beat your guy, but really you just opened up a gap. So I want to see Cal, for them, they need to see themselves really stay disciplined, stay down the line of scrimmage. And like you said, I'm curious though, Darius Taylor, he was a little banged up in their last game. He kind of hurt his hamstring. It appeared. And PJ Fleck was kind of talking about they got good news, but they're not going to say anything to help Cal in any kind of way. So he's probably a game time decision. That's how I'm interpreting it. That's how I'm writing my article, prepping the game. But like you mentioned too, Grant Washington, he's the one who's quietly averaging north of 6 yards per carry. So the D-line's going to have to stay disciplined. I do think this game will come at the right time for the Bears because last week was just one that they're trying to shove down the toilet. A home opener was not that great. It's rare that you're disappointed after a 32-point win, but this is how the Cal felt that day. So I think this game couldn't have come at a better time. Like I've said before, it's a barometer, and they're playing a really good team in the trenches. And I think that's exactly what Cal needs right before 2 weeks out of conference play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And they do have another little bit of a thumper in AJ Turner. So I'm very interested to see how that three-headed monster, if Darius does play, holds up. And as you alluded to, Cal needs to maintain gap integrity if they want to have success against a Minnesota team whose bread and butter right now is running that football. Now, Joaquin, before I let you out of here, man, I just want to hear your final predictions on how you think this game plays out for the Golden Bears against the Golden Gophers.
I think it'll be sloppy, but I think it'll be a little bit more high scoring than people think. I was talking to some of my Bear Bengers co-hosts earlier, and they're kind of in the low 20s, but I'm thinking more of like a 28-21 Cal win. That's just in the ballpark. But I do think Cal wins. Just from being a student here and covering the team for a while, I feel like they always get whatever's nasty out of their system right before a big game, and I kind of feel like last year Cal beat Auburn in Alabama after a gross UC Davis home opener. So that reminds me of this time around Cal facing Minnesota after a nasty home opener against Texas Southern. I think Cal, I don't know how the rest of the season will go, but I think on this Saturday, I think the things will click. We might see a deep ball finally connect since it's been a week now, but I think Jaron will find a big play and give students a memory for the rest of their lives. And hopefully Cal can figure out what they're doing because, it's been week one, this offense is unreal. This true freshman is everything. And then week two, kind of crickets. So week three, I think, is a big opportunity, and it kind of seems like Cal's going to do a throwback and break out their gold uniforms. It is the gold out game, so who knows if we see maybe Jacob DeJesus break one out like Deshaun Jackson or something. So it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, I personally can't wait to watch it myself. I am going to be staying up late to watch that game.
Yep.
Big fan of the Golden Bears and the Cal algorithm. Just a great fan base in general. So seeing when Cal's good, college football is good. That's what I like to say. Joaquin, before you get out of here, brother, can you just let everybody know where they can find you at on your social medias?
They can find me. I think it's on my name right here, but at Joaquin Ruiz. Joaquin spelled like you're walking down the street, so it's easy for you guys to remember. And then my last name Ruiz. I cover the Golden Bears on campus for the school newspaper and the student radio. And I'm also an editor at NBC Sports Bay Area. So just shout out those outlets. And yeah, thank you for having me, Thomas.
No, I appreciate you so much, man. You take care.
You too. Have a good one.
And that is Joaquin Ruiz. For anybody listening audio-wise, you can find him on X/Twitter at Walking, spelled Walking, and Ruiz, Ruiz. Now, I have him waiting in the green room. Great friend of the show. Love talking some Syracuse football with him, and we're going to be talking some Syracuse versus Colgate. You can find him on the Wake Up Call DT. It is my good friend Dan Tatora. Dan, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Just finished up Syracuse interviews today, so got to talk to Fran yesterday, and then got to speak with a few of the guys today, Justice Ross Simmons and Steve Angeli, just a little while ago.
I love that, man. Before we start looking ahead towards Colgate, I want to look back a little bit at UConn. Obviously, you were there with me. We heard some of the calls for Ricky Collins and after Steve's tough start to the UConn game, but it seemed like those calls just whatever it was, man, right after that happened, something clicked in Steve, and he really did a fantastic job leading the Syracuse comeback to beating UConn in overtime 27-20. What was your conversation like with Steve that you can, without giving away, I don't want to give away your content, but what are your thoughts about Steve and going into this game and just as a leader?
Listen, I could say how much time we got. I mean, Steve is a professional. He is a hardworking gentleman. He appreciates his opportunities. He works very hard. And I don't know how many quarterbacks that I've seen get hit blindsided once, let alone twice in a game, and got right back up. Didn't need to come out for a series. Didn't have to go into a tent. I mean, the dude is, and we talked to, he said this to me after the game, mental toughness, physical toughness. He has them both. The first, people have to understand, you booed Steve Angeli in the Dome when he was so excited to play his first ever game in front of the Syracuse fans. Some of those Syracuse fans booed him in his first experience. And he responded by throwing a touchdown pass to Justice Ross Simmons, leading a drive with Yasin Willis, completing a 2-point conversion to Darrell Gill Jr., and then throwing another touchdown pass in overtime to Justice Ross Simmons. So mental toughness there, physical toughness there, appreciation there, hard work there, dedication, determination, bend but don't break. And on top of all of those things, this guy just continues to move forward. And I have fielded questions and or heard conversations in passing, either going to a restaurant or a sports card show or just somebody coming up and asking about it. The conversation of, are you done with Steve? I'm going to tell you in less than a year's time, this is how crazy things have been. And this is what shows, this is why I'm happy that only a few people get to coach and not everyone who thinks that they're a coach. Because Ricky Collins, I got to break the news that Ricky was with the team. Now, some people are like, oh, he's going to commit to Syracuse. And then there was this kind of like time of like, did he, didn't he, what's going to happen? And then I got to break the news that he was with the team in San Diego at the DirecTV Holiday Bowl. He was able to practice with the team. So I told everybody, like, yeah, he's officially with the team. He's practicing with the team. People got excited. People all about it. Then we went into spring, and I'm showing 7 seconds of him literally in shorts with, like, nobody on somebody, just turning and throwing a pass to someone. And people, like, it's viral videos of just, like, people, oh, my gosh, 7 seconds of him throwing a football. I'm going to lose my mind. And then spring ends, and they bring in Steve, and everybody's like, all right, screw Ricky. Who cares about Ricky? Ricky's trash. On to Steve now. Then Steve plays 2 games. They're, oh, we hate this guy. Let's go to Ricky. And so it's such a ridiculous, it's a very ignorant, illogical, irrational way to look at life. And it wouldn't work in any other way. Like, you couldn't marry a woman and be like 3 months in, I think I like her sister more. Let me date her for a little bit. And then and you know what? Her sister don't cook as well as she does. Let me take her back. You know what? She might not cook as well. She's all right, but she don't like to watch the games I like to watch. So like it's this crazy thing that goes on, and people asking me like, are you done with Steve? When are you done with Steve? After this game, will you be done with Steve? If they don't blow out Colgate, is it time to move on from Steve? And I'm just like, dude, this guy was your heir apparent savior. You buried Ricky Collins alive for him. Now you're digging Ricky out and asking Steve to jump in that grave. I think it's crazy. I think it's stupid. I think it's idiotic. If he throws 3 interceptions against Colgate, I still think it's stupid. So, I mean, Peyton Manning had a horrible first year in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence had a horrible first year in the NFL. It takes time for guys to get comfortable, right? Tommy Castellanos didn't have the respect when he was at UCF or the recruitment that he has now when he is at Florida State and he's beating Alabama. So everything that is good in life takes time, and that is in every nook and cranny, including with Steve Angeli. And I am not on the Steve Angeli hate train, and I'm not on the Ricky Collins hate train. I saw Ricky an hour or so ago, and I walked up to him and I bumped his fist and I said, I'm always hoping the best for you, man. I mean, and that's the truth. I want him to be happy. I want Steve to be happy. I want them to support each other. And all I can say about fans that boo your team at home, they get booed enough on the road. Why would you want them to come home and feel like they don't belong at home? And that's never made any sense to me. And I would say that about any team, any sport, anywhere. It's just, it's like subhuman to me to like boo your own team. I think it's a really disgraceful thing to do. And I think that the people that do that should, in good conscience, give their season tickets to somebody else.
Yeah, I honestly don't disagree, because you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, why would you want your team to come home and then feel unwanted? Like, this is the thing that, like, I mean, me and you have talked about it. That UConn game was going to be a tough game regardless. Like, it was not a walk in the park that people, a lot of fans just assumed it was going to be. And But the thing is, you didn't see anybody on Syracuse quit. Like, sure, and the end result shows that, but just even leading up to that point, those guys were still playing. I mean, the defense was still playing amazing. I don't, if I'm not mistaken, after the 2 turnovers, I don't think they gave up points on either of those ensuing possessions. And that just speaks to, the belief, not just in, Fran Brown, but it shows in the belief in Steve too, right? They want to give him another chance, because how many times have we seen bad football teams, their defense, the quarterback throws an interception or fumbles the ball and the defense just caves because they're just not in it the same way. You won't find that with this Syracuse team. And I think that's very important. And it speaks to not just the way Coach Brown is, coaching these kids, but it speaks to the respect they have for each other. And, you talked about Ricky. Ricky was one of the guys, hyping Angeli up on one of those touchdowns, giving him I think he gave him like a big old hug if my eyes weren't deceiving me. And he's just been very positive in his own light. Now, switching to this Colgate game, we might have a chance to see both of them. Do you think that Ricky comes in the second half if the game becomes a blowout, or do you think you keep Steve in to get the game experience?
It's up to Fran, and I think that if I were Fran, and let's say Syracuse is up at halftime 30-7, right? Then like maybe I consider something like that. Maybe I consider putting in Ricky. You want your backup quarterback to have experience. Gosh forbid you need him. And so this is a game where they would get experience. You also want Steve to feel comfortable, and this team has struggled to get going. They didn't get going against Tennessee. They went down 17-0. The last 3 quarters, 28-26. They were within 2 points. They didn't get going in this game against UConn at halftime. They're down 14-6. They respond by going 21-6 in the second half plus overtime. So they have shown that they are a team that does not start as early, right? They don't come right out of the gate. It like takes them some time to warm up the car and heat the seats and make sure you want to sit in it. So, they got to correct that. Justice Ross Simmons talked about that tonight. Obviously the team's got to get better at doing things quicker. And, I mean, if they're clicking on all cylinders, you might want Steve to stay in and have a complete game. You might want him to get comfortable. You might want to put in other receivers. You might want to let Malachi James loose a little bit and kind of see what some of these other guys can do with Angeli. So, I mean, I'm in the world of what I like to see them both. Yes. Would I understand if Fran didn't do it in order to get his quarterback comfortable? I do understand that element of it too. So, I mean, this is the game to see them both. I would think that potentially that will happen, even if it's for the last couple series. But I also understand if there is a psyche thing to have Angeli start and finish and have success in all 4 quarters, that will help him because they have Clemson coming up. So, I mean, I get both angles.
Yeah, it's tough because they do have that big Clemson game looming. But hey, they can't overlook Colgate, which is, I mean, I know it feels weird saying that because Colgate actually hasn't won since 1950. But at the same time, it's a very long rivalry before it stopped being as one-sided. And I'm sure Colgate will try to get up and play. So with that in mind, what are your keys for Syracuse to not just win the game, but to control the game throughout the duration?
Harassment defense, consistent. You have to create turnovers and you have to score off of them. So create turnovers, be disruptive, swarm to the ball, knock the ball out, make them pay for it. If they want to catch the ball over the middle, make them pay for that. Attack the quarterback, hurry the quarterback, get him uncomfortable, do it right off the bat, make him throw across his body, make him throw, off the wrong foot. They have to come out defensively and be so overpowering that it's suffocating to Colgate. Because that will make them feel good. That will give them some momentum going into Clemson as well. I would say don't overlook this game. I would say don't overlook it thinking about Clemson. You have to play the team that's in front of you. So I would say play the team that's in front of you. Be harassing, be consistent, swarm to the ball, score on your possessions, run the ball a little bit more, be a little more demoralizing with that. There is nothing more aggravating and frustrating, I would imagine, to a defense than slowly but surely being pushed inch by inch, yard by yard, backward, and then you look and you're in your own end zone. And, you take 7-8 minutes off the clock. So you're not getting the ball, you're sitting out there, you're sweating, and this team is just 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, 10 yards. So, I mean, I would say I want to see them run the ball a little bit more, harassment defense, and you got to score early and often, show that you can score out of the gate, and don't overlook your opponent. I mean, that's the biggest thing is you can never look beyond what's in front of you.
Yeah, I think getting out and getting a lead early is going to be important for them. I completely agree with you about running the football too. I want to see them, not that they're not aggressive anyway, but we saw last week against UConn, or this past week rather, Yasin Willis was trying to hurt people running the football. That's a big man, and imposing that will, and Nixon showed he played great as well. So I would love to see those two guys more involved in this, at least in this game plan. And I completely agree on defense too. I mean, Syracuse has to be able to start getting takeaways. They have to start making other teams pay off those takeaways. It'll be I don't want to say tough because Colgate is still a lower tier FCS program, but Zach Osborne, the quarterback that they have there, he's been very careful with the football. He hasn't turned it over yet. As well, and I think they do have a wide receiver. I believe his name's Trayvon Sanders. For 8th player in program history, 2,000 yards, and he also had a 223-yard game, 13 catches, entering this matchup. So he's going to be somebody to look at too. So, but I just wanted to ask you, since you're somebody who's lived in this area, has the rivalry used to be very big for a long time, and it kind of fizzled out past the 50s. So, but just for somebody living in that area, do fans still get up for that game, or is it just kind of a so to speak?
I think I think the modern day fan looks at this game and says, This better be a blowout, and it better be nowhere close. And Syracuse just needs to take it to them and just make this a 77-3 game. And then I think there's the people that say, I appreciate the history. And, I love that the two New York schools are playing against each other. I mean, I think that my concern is that fans won't show up, that they'll say, I'll watch this massacre from home, and I think that fans need to show up. I liked that there was a good crowd at the first game against UConn. And I'd like to see that consistent. This is the thing. Y'all wait all year for these games, and then when you don't show up, there's only 6 of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some people will say, well, you took the best one and you put it on the road in Tennessee, and we was in Georgia, and it's like, okay, yeah, but whatever. Like, the reality of it all is these are the games you have at home, and the Colgate ticket's not going to be that expensive. So get yourself out to the game. Go, like, what else are you what are you doing on Friday night? Like, what is your plan on Friday night? So, I know that there might be some Friday night high school football going on and whatnot, and I understand parents that need to be there. But to everybody else that doesn't have a kid playing high school football, like, what are you doing Friday night? Where do you need to be? So just come over to the game, have some fun, come to the pregame show at Myers Creek. We're going to be there at 5:00. Come with us, have some fun with Isaac and I doing our thing. And then, go up to the game. And I feel like these should be events. I feel like I've been exposed to really, really awesome tailgating. And I've seen stuff, I've seen Penn State and I've seen Florida State, and, I've gotten to go to different places and experience different things. And there's certain ones that stick out, like Florida State, Florida, and like going to Penn State for the college football playoff. So for me, this game, like any game, should be well received. If you're someone, well, I'd rather see Clemson. I'd rather see Florida State. I'd rather see Miami. Well, it's not possible. I would rather gas prices be lower. I would rather that eggs are never $6. There's a lot of things that I would rather. I would rather that people use social media to spread love and cheer and not hate each other. I'd rather that bullying doesn't exist. I'd rather that, people in the media told the truth and were nice to each other. Like, there's a lot of things that I would rather have in this world. So I get it, but it's a football game and there's 6 of them. And when they're done, everybody's like, what am I going to do for the rest of my, year until it comes back? So enjoy the moment, live in the moment, go to the game. It's exciting. They want to see you there. And, I don't like the mentality of, if you want us to come, play better people. I just don't like that. I think you should come to the games and support your team no matter what. And, you get the schedule that you get, and that's just something that happens. And I like that they're playing a New York team. I'm excited for that. I think they should play Buffalo. I think they should play Colgate. I like that they're doing, UB would be a great matchup because UB sent some guys to the NFL and done some good things. And so, there's certain teams that I would like to see them go up against, and I'm never going to shy away from a New York game. And I think we should have an ACC versus the MAC, Syracuse versus Buffalo.
I would love that. And I actually do agree with this, because it's not just, fans want to see their teams win. And if, what better way to do that than watching games like this anyway, number one. Number two, a matchup like Colgate has so much history behind it. It started in 1891. The reason why it's played at Syracuse now is an interesting story, where the Colgate alumni is tackling a Syracuse player in a tie game, forces it to stay a tie. The school the school student bodies were renting planes, dropping pamphlets at each at each campus. I'm pretty sure Colgate dropped paint on Syracuse's stadium at the time, and to the point where I think it was either 1950 or 51. The two student bodies came together and had to sign a pact in Casanova. So that's just interesting. That's interesting stuff you can tell your kids about at the game. If you're bringing younger kids, it's a great way. Games like that are a great way to bring in new Syracuse fans, because at a young age, most of the kids don't necessarily care who they're playing if they're just spending time with their family. And I do think that really is important. Now, Dan, before I get you out of here, man, can you just let everybody know where they can find you at on your social medias?
Yeah, and I do want to let people know, like, even though they haven't played a game since in 75 years, which is, I mean, it's crazy, or not party that Colgate hasn't recorded a victory in 75 years. Even though that hasn't happened, they've met 68 times. And here's the crazy thing. The record's 32 wins, Syracuse, 31 wins, Colgate, 5 ties back when you could tie. So, like, as much as people are like, oh, this game, like, historically, Syracuse is 1 game above Colgate. So, I mean, it's cool, and I'm excited to see it. I'm looking forward to it. Kurt Fitzpatrick's a guy that's been on the show when he was leading SUNY Cortland to national championships in NCAA Division III. He let me hold the trophy. I attempted to take it home. He suggested I didn't. I don't know why, but it's fine. And I was like, at least let me take a Cortica jug or something. But him being over at Colgate now, I mean, this is going to be really meaningful to him to be in the Dome. So I'm excited to see it. I think people should show up. I mean, listen, if you love football and you love your team, you're showing up no matter what. And let's be real. Okay. A bunch of week 2 games, people were playing churches, elementary schools, and candy shops. Yeah. So I think that this game being New York versus New York is one that's worth coming to. And I will say, so yeah, for Wake Up Call, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 in the morning, a.m. Eastern time. And you can find us on YouTube and Facebook, both at Wake Up Call DT. You can find us on X at Call DT, where we share the feed, and on Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. If you forget all of that and you just want to go to one place where everything is, you can go to wakeupcalldt.com, and all of the live feed clickable buttons are there, as well as all of our articles and everything that we do in one place, including all the wonderful businesses that we get to work with. So very easy to find.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. I can't wait to see you at the Friday night's game. It should be a fun one.
I'm excited. I want to let everybody know this too, since you could only half see it, because I appreciate this gentleman, and he was way far beyond his years. But I am wearing my Prince t-shirt for your show today. So
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm a big Prince fan too.
Yeah, best song. Okay, underrated, but best song in my opinion ever by Prince. Most Beautiful Girl in the World.
Oh, I don't know if I'm familiar. Maybe if I listen to the melody, I might know that, but I'm very bad with names. I'm gonna have to keep that.
I thought that Prince was singing with a woman, but it was just his 2 voices.
Really?
Yeah, like I asked my parents as a kid, I was like, who's the girl in this? And my mom and my dad were thinking about it. And then my mom looked at my dad and she's like, I think that's just him. And my brain as a child was like, there's no way that deep voiced man is, and there's no way. There's no way. But it was all Prince. That man could definitely, he could do a duet with himself. I will give him that credit.
Yeah. Oh, incredibly talented musician and composer by far. But then thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I truly appreciate it.
Prince was going to preview Syracuse Colgate, did you? So
I did not. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. I'll see you Friday.
All right. Sounds good, man. Be safe and get in safe.
Yes, sir. You take care. That was Daniel Trattoria from the Wake Up Call DT show. You can find him on X/Twitter at Call DT, and you can actually find him at wakeupcalldt.com. He's been covering Syracuse for over 20 years. He's a great friend of the show, and I do appreciate him coming on. I do have 2 guests waiting in the green room right now. First one I'm going to bring on, who's usually with us as a host, does the UCF and FSU coverage for the league winners. If I can even talk just a little tongue-tied, I apologize. You know him. You maybe you love him, maybe you hate him. Who knows? It's Brandyn. Hey, Brandyn, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. And he has also been patient, waiting in the green room with him. He's covering the Wisconsin Badgers for us. This is Trevor Hammond. Trevor, how are you doing, brother?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So let's get to Trevor first, because I don't want to keep him too long. I know we went a little over schedule, but I did want to talk about, kind of recap last week's game, against Middle Tennessee. Wisconsin, ended up beating them 42-10. What were your takeaways from that game?
I guess initially, bad first half, good second half, to put it in simple terms. First half, they didn't come out with much energy. It was very mediocre play, to be quite frank. The offensive line was getting beat by a much lesser opponent. Second half was a lot better. Christian Allegro's tackle on 4th and 1, while Middle Tennessee was driving to actually score a touchdown to get to 17-10, was a big play. That kind of turned the game, and ever since then they rattled off like 28 points, whatever, 32 points. Yeah. But I think the offensive line did play a lot better in the second half. First half, it was a little bit shaky. I thought Danny O'Neal actually played really well. Billy Edwards Jr. was out with that lower leg injury. Danny O'Neal held himself to a high standard. He played really well. So I thought that was a positive. I thought the defense played good again, a lot more physical than they were last year. Again, lesser opponent. We'll see, how physical they are this week against Alabama. But some good and some bad. But I'd say in the end, it was a lot more good in the end than there was bad.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I know, Billy Edwards was hurt and Danny did play well. I mean, threw for nearly 300 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. But now going into week 3, they have a very tough matchup, against the Crimson Tide there. Billy Edwards still, I don't know if he's still, he still might not even be in this game. Are you concerned? Are you concerned about Danny O'Neal starting if he's the one who gets his name called?
To some extent, to less of an extent than I was before the Middle Tennessee game. Obviously, it's not apples to apples comparison with talent level between Middle Tennessee and Alabama.
Right.
But I thought he looked confident. He got the ball out quickly. I do think for Wisconsin to have success against Alabama, he is going to need to throw the ball downfield, and somebody will need to get open. They can't just stink and dunk and do end arounds against Alabama like they did against Middle Tennessee. Yeah. So the area he does lack is arm strength. So it will be interesting to see. I do have concerns about him being able to find, Vinny Anthony down the field, for example, because he will need to push the ball down the field. But I do feel a little bit better about him against Alabama than I did, about a week ago. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the end around. They had that 61-yard touchdown from Trek, but then outside of that, the running game was not great. I believe Dylan Jones only had 10 carries for I think like 30 something yards. Darian Dupree went 6 of 25, which that's not great, not too great either. Do you think that there's a chance Wisconsin becomes one-dimensional against Alabama? And if you mentioned your concerns, with O'Neal throwing the ball, do you think that they might find themselves in a situation where can't throw, can't run? What do we do?
I think there is a potential for that happening. Obviously, they're going to try to establish the run right away. They did reshuffle the whole entire offensive line for Middle Tennessee, so maybe another week, they might, get some better run production.
Right.
But if they can't run the ball and O'Neal is forced to pass, and especially if they get behind early, it's very crucial that they, first couple of drives that they hold their own.
Yeah.
And historically, Luke Fickell teams don't come out starting the game very good. They usually find themselves behind. So I do have concerns there, but there is an avenue where I can see that it does become a very, very one-dimensional game, and O'Neal is put into a tough spot where he has to become a gunslinger when he's not really a gunslinger. He's, a game manager, So.
Yeah. It's tough, especially since I believe they're playing in Tuscaloosa, right? Yeah. So and Ty Simpson, after all the talk about him not performing well against Florida State, I know it's Louisiana Monroe, but they weren't slouches in their right, and they got beat 73-0. And Ty Simpson did look good throwing the ball. I don't think he missed a pass and went 226 yards, 3 touchdowns. On defense for Wisconsin, who has to step up in your mind in order to keep this Alabama offense at bay?
I circled the D-line and the edge players. So obviously, Caden Proctor, he's one of the best linemen in the country. So whoever is opposite rushing against Caden Proctor, whoever is rushing against the right tackle, Wilkin Formby is going to be the key. So whether that's Sebastian Cheeks, whether that's, Mason Rieger, Daryl Peterson, whoever it is going to need to win that, need to win those pass rushing downs, because if they can't create any pressure, I think Ty Simpson's just going to pick them apart, especially because there is question marks on the other side, opposite Ricardo Holman. Ricardo Holman's a good corner, but opposite him, there is some question marks between Deani Hill and Emilio Agard, whoever ends up starting against Alabama. But do have concerns there, opposite Ricardo Holman. So the people I circled, whoever goes against Milken Formby, right tackle, and then depending on how well Agard and Deani Hill play is going to be really telling on, how well this game goes for the Badgers.
Yeah, because even with the way Alabama looked against, Louisiana Monroe, their defense does have some weaknesses to it. Trevor, before I let you go, though, what are your predictions going into this game? Do you think Wisconsin has a real fighting chance?
I do. So they are, 20 and a half, 21 and a half point underdogs, depending on where you look. I do think they lucked out having it be a noon, 11 o'clock game, because, it's going to be the crowd is obviously going to be great because it's Bryant-Denny, but I think it won't be, as big of a factor if it was like a night game, for example. The heat will play a factor. It's going to be like 90, 95 degrees there, and, Wisconsin traveling down there, it's, 60 degrees here right now. So it's going to be a little bit of a temperature shock. So they could get, worn out by third, fourth quarter. I do think they have a chance. Their defense is going to have to play amazing. I think their defense can't keep them in it. I think their front seven will be fine against Alabama, to be completely honest. I think their back end is maybe where they struggle against, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard.
Right.
I think if the offensive line blocks good and, is able to come off the ball and establish the line of scrimmage there, I do give them a fighter's chance. Do I expect them to go down there and win by 10 points? No. Do I think they can keep it close and maybe lose by 14, 17 points? I think that's very realistic for that.
Yeah, I think that's possible too. I mean, we've already seen crazier stuff happen so far in this college football season. And one of those actually already happened to Alabama. So who knows if it could happen again. They could go into a sort of lull after beating the crap out of Louisiana Monroe. Yeah. I mean, there's no, I mean, as much as, they may be favorites in week 3, they're not going to put up 73 points on Wisconsin. Yeah. We know that much. But hey, Trev, before we let you go, man, can you let everyone please, let them know where they can find you on your social media?
Yeah. So you guys can find me on Twitter, X, or whatever you want to call it, at Trevor_Hammond. So all things Badgers over there.
I appreciate you so much for coming on the show, Trevor. Thank you, bro.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah, you take care. That was Trevor Hammond from the League Winners covering Wisconsin football for us. You can find him at Trevor_Hammond, HAMANN. And that is on X/Twitter. Trevor does great work for us covering Wisconsin, and he does some fill-in stuff as a freelance writer too. Really make sure you guys are checking him out and following him on his social media. Now, Brandon, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. Definitely on the second half of the show, I have some wait time, especially coming in after the Syracuse part. But I'm here. I'm here for you, Tom.
I appreciate you, man. We always end up running a little late, but hey, at least we still end up having fun in the end. And you're kind of like you're in a little chill zone right now. I see you're a little more chilled out, but maybe that's because UCF and FSU don't have a game this week. But I do want to talk about their games last week. UCF is quietly 2-0, beating Jacksonville State 17-10. But then they absolutely dog walked, the A&T Aggies this past weekend. Your boy Taven Jackson got the start, but it was really the rushing game that just absolutely took off. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I just looking back through, A lot of very big and explosive plays, actually from both UCF and FSU. It started the game with Jaden Nitson with a 96-yard kickoff return. I kind of talked before. I was surprised that Jaden Nitson didn't play more. Technically, didn't play a lot more. It's just his few carries were huge. He had 4 carries for 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miles Montgomery, 8 carries for 35 yards. And then in the second half, Ja'Cory Brown took over, and he had 106 rush yards in the second half. Taven Jackson had 2 rushing touchdowns, did okay with 12 of 21 for 189 yards. As I said, there's that kick return for Jade Nitson, those quick, long plays and turnovers by North Carolina A&T. So a lot of short possessions. So I don't know if we really found out much more about UCF, but they did what they were supposed to do. They won the game easily. Defense played well. We'll see if Vancher comes back after the bye and, what happens with that. I don't see a way.
Is Vancher supposed to come back? Do you know if he's supposed to?
Well, they said he should be back after the bye. They didn't, at least that's what they said before last week's game. I haven't really seen any updated info,
Right.
But this is kind of the perfect opportunity for them to not necessarily bench Fancher and put Jackson in because he played well in, those 2 games. I think the one issue is they don't have a go-to receiver yet. They just kind of distributed it out, and obviously not that experienced, passer. So
Right.
I think they will lean on the running game, which really got going this game. I do wonder if they are going to start playing Ja'Cory Brown more because last year he had a lot of parts where he ran the ball. So they have 3 quarterbacks that all can run. I think Taven Jackson's the best passer. So it'll be interesting how they move forward. I would have liked to see Jaden Nitson get more passes. I mean, obviously they didn't have to pass a lot, but I think he could be really utilized in the passing game more. So we'll see moving forward if they try to do that more.
Yeah, I'm very curious myself. And then they come out of their bye, and I'm pretty sure they play UNC if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's
They
correct.
host the Tar Heels. Bill Belichick's team. Very interested to see how that goes. I'll save the preview for that. We can do that next week, as I do want to highlight the FSU team as well, where Alabama shut out, had a 73-0 shutout. But Florida State's might have been even more impressive, where they beat East Texas A&M 77-3. And that was just another game where, it was a who's who on Florida State was really getting going, especially some monstrous pass plays and just overall great performance by the Seminoles. What stuck out from you or to you from that performance?
Yeah, the first drive, they only had 1 pass play, and it was a pass to Deuce Robinson, who had a huge game. So mostly running, 11 out of 12 plays. So I kind of thought I was a little disappointed because I thought they should utilize, the time and with the inferior opponent to pass the ball. But then, after that first drive, they had a long pass to Deuce Robinson, who showed off his speed in that play. And then the next touchdown showed his athletic ability with the one-handed grab in the end zone.
That was sick.
Yeah, it was crazy. And Castellanos, efficient day, only had to throw 11 passes, completed 8 for 237 yards and 3 touchdowns. He only had 4 carries for 7 yards. Yeah, he really threw it wherever he wanted. I think the bigger part for me is the running back distribution. I was checking in the first half of the second quarter to see if Jalen Lucas was hurt because he did not see the field until halfway through the second quarter when they took the starters out. So it really was Chroma, the freshman, and Gavin Sawchuk. Gavin Sawchuk is the best, I think, goal line type runner. You would think Chroma is, but he's a freshman. He's still working on that. But Sawchuk was brought in on 4th down for a touchdown. They used him on some Wildcat. So I think that for the running game, they have so many good backs. And this game, There are 6 touchdowns of over 40 yards. 8 players scored a touchdown. I will say, I don't know if this changes anything, but early in the game, the second drive for East Texas A&M, their quarterback got his helmet knocked off, and then they had to bring in the backup that they kind of switched back and forth last week, and they ended up having to punt. And they had like a little success, a couple first downs, and pretty much after that, the game just fell apart. Not to say that they would have even kept it close, but the offense just could not move the ball at all. Florida State had 2 interceptions. Earl Little Jr. had a nice play where he was playing, kind of in the middle of the field. It was a bad pass, but he was able to intercept it and almost ran it back for a touchdown. This is exactly what Florida State wants. If you can have Tommy Castellanos only throw 11 passes, I mean, that's right where they want to be. Right. My only concern is, because they have Kent State after the bye, which they should do the same thing too. I just wonder when they have to pass, if they will be ready for it. Like if Castellanos has to pass like 25, 30 times.
Right.
But they have so many weapons. They have different receivers. Dansby, he's a reverse guy, but 2 of the 3 times he's ran a reverse, he scored a touchdown. He's a track guy with a tremendous speed.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I saw somebody a coach on Twitter, X, whatever, talking about that they ran reverses with him twice now, and now eventually it was a counter reverse, and now they think that going forward, FSU is going to set that up to have like just a power run with either Castellanos or whoever, and it's going to end up the other team's going to be so prepared for the counter because they see it on tape that they're just going to run away with it on the other side. So I think that's very interesting. How do you feel about Malzone's offense?
So one thing, that a lot of people have talked about for Florida State, I actually had a friend that went to a practice at UNF in the offseason and said one of the things is just the different formations, the motion. It's totally different. It makes plays easier, and everything like that. And Florida State just has so much speed, so many weapons. Squirrel White didn't even have a catch in this game. He did get injured on a punt return. They need to get him going, because pretty much the only receiver that's done anything is Deuce Robinson. But he showed his potential. I do wonder if he's going to have a different player that he highlights each game based on the matchup, because, as I said, Jalen Lucas was heavily involved in the first game. And they ran very similar plays that they kind of ran with Lucas, but with Gavin Sawchuk and a little bit with the other running backs. Another thing is, I don't necessarily remember them doing this in their undefeated season, but they are going for it on 4th down a ton. Yeah. Like early on their first drive, was 4th and 1. They had a false start. It was 4th and 6, and they still went for it.
That's ballsy, man.
And and there's another, against Alabama or in their territory, they probably went for it on 4th down at least 3 or 4 times. I think that was my biggest question with the letdown from Alabama, but they were aggressive out of the gate. They have that swagger. They were, scoring those long plays. They just have the speed.
Right.
There's a lot of misdirection. So if the defenses aren't ready for that misdirection, as you said, there's probably plays they're going to play off of that. Because I think that they did the Jalen Lucas a lot of sweeps in week 1, and then they came back with a reverse that really fooled Alabama. Like you said, some of these reverses, they have on 4th down, they did a bootleg. Well, they did the same plays with 2 different quarterbacks. Castellanos hit Sawchuk for a long touchdown, and then the backup hit the tight end in the back of the end zone. So maybe Gus kind of figured some stuff out, because the quarterback play looks better. I mean, obviously Alabama's defense was not playing great the first week, and East Texas A&M this week, but their expectations obviously are way higher for the Florida State fan base. And kind of look at ACC, Clemson looks like a disaster right now. Obviously got Miami. Florida doesn't look as tough, after that loss to USF, and how, who knows if Billy Napier will be there. So definitely there's a chance for them to make a real run and possibly, no one would have thought this, but possibly get into the playoff this year.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and they do have a week. They're off this week, as we mentioned before, but they do have the week 4 matchup against Kent State, which we can kind of. I don't like to write teams off, but we can kind of write that one as a victory for FSU. If they don't win that one, then that would be a serious problem for the Seminoles. Going forward, I do want to bring up one other matchup. It's probably the best matchup on the slate. That's not USF Miami. But before we do that, I just want to mention, if you guys are listening to this podcast, if you're scrolling through it, if you're doing anything, please make sure you are liking. Please make sure you're commenting. Please make sure you're sharing. If you're listening on YouTube or on Facebook, make sure you like it. You can leave a comment if you want to. We do try to get to those live during the show. And most importantly, please subscribe to the channel, because it is completely free and it helps us grow and monetize going forward. But before that, leading off of that, the last matchup I do want to talk to you about, and I know it's not a game where we really cover both teams on the company, but it is probably one of the most important games on the week 3 slate, and that's Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. Notre Dame hasn't played a game since that loss to Miami, the 27-24 loss, late loss. Meanwhile, the Texas A&M Aggies have kind of been rolling along with an impressive, I don't know how you feel about UTSA. I think they're a decent team. Texas A&M nearly doubled them in points, beating them 42-24. And then they did double Utah State, which is another team that I don't think is too terrible. They beat them 44-22. Now it's number 16 Texas A&M versus number 8 Notre Dame at Notre Dame on Saturday in week 3. How do you think that game plays out?
I think it's going to be a defensive, low-scoring game, running the ball. Both teams kind of are going that way. I think Texas A&M has the more mobile, better dual threat quarterback. I guess it would be whoever doesn't make those mistakes can control the ball. But I think defense would definitely be what Texas A&M and Notre Dame are trying to do. I would think that both teams are going to load up against the run, try to stop the run, and then it'll be whatever quarterback can make a couple plays down the field. And I think if either team gets a double-digit lead, it might be hard for the other team to come back, because they just are not really made up that way.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that there's a chance that Notre Dame comes off kind of slow because they have had this week and a half plus of rest? Do you think they are going to come out of this matchup a little slower than they probably want to?
It's possible, especially with a young quarterback. It'll be interesting because, most teams like to defer,
Right.
especially defensive teams. If I was Notre Dame, I would want to get the ball and try to score first in some capacity to kind of, set the tone, get the crowd going, and everything like that.
Yeah, I actually don't think that's a bad idea, and we still have some time, so I do want to go over some the 2025 power rankings if you want to, if you want to do
Sure,
that.
why not? Are you going to shit on my rankings?
If I can bring it up, give me 1 second here. No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that.
I don't want you to go in on me like you did.
Hey,
that other
you know what?
person.
Hey, you know what? We're gonna go through them, and actually, what's funny about our rankings is that we only had one team difference from the league winners power rankings that you're seeing here, as opposed to the coaches poll. Are you surprised by that?
No, that just means we know our stuff. Either that or the coaches don't know their stuff. One of the two.
Yeah, and actually, two of the teams that got out of the rankings was SMU and Florida, and that was the two teams taken out of the coaches poll as well. But before we start, going down the rest of that list, let's just start with the League winners 2025 power rankings. Entering week 3, we're going to start at the top. It's Ohio State, Penn State, Georgia, 1 through 3. We'll go top 5, LSU at 4, Oregon at 5. None of these guys have moved since last week. Are you surprised that they haven't moved?
I am. I think in my rankings, I moved the top 5 around.
Yes, you did, but these are the consensus, Brandon.
I know. I'm just saying.
Now going through the top 10, we have Miami at 6, Texas 7, Illinois 8, South Carolina at 9, and Notre Dame at 10. The big jump here is Illinois. They've gained 5 spots since last week. Are you surprised about any of these teams in the top 10 here?
I might have thought Oklahoma would make it into the top 10. But no, I thought Illinois win. I thought Illinois would win. It was a little touch and go for a while, but I thought they looked pretty good against, a lot. I saw a lot of people saying that Duke was going to win that game. The defense played well. They're starting to get some receivers to really step out, and Altmaier is actually getting some draft buzz. So, and I never thought he would get that. So they're definitely a team that isn't just run and play defense. They can pass the ball some. So that definitely bodes well for them. And I think they could be a sleeper, in the Big Ten, because I don't think they play all the top teams this year in the regular season.
No, and they have been putting up points. So it's nice to see them crack the top 10. We'll go 11 through 20 now. Oklahoma, which you just mentioned, comes in at 11. Iowa State at 12. Florida State jumps up to 13 after being unranked last week. They did get some votes, though. Clemson's at 14. Tennessee 15. Any surprise for you on the top 15 there?
Clemson should drop more.
Yeah, they've been disappointing, man. They've started really slow for the season. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But right now they are currently at that 14 spot. They did drop 3 in the rankings. Depending how they play, that could be even worse. We'll go finish the top 20 now. 16's Ole Miss, 17 is Texas A&M. Both of them have jumped 4 spots as well. Alabama comes in at 18. Indiana, I know you're going to love this one. They come in at 19, jump 6 spots in the rankings.
How high did you rank Indiana to make them move up that high?
Well,
did you put Indiana 1 or something?
We're going to see
how they jumped that high?
Utah comes in 20th, outside of Indiana, who's deservedly in the top 20. Are you surprised about any of the teams on there?
I'm surprised Ole Miss jumped that much. I watched a good amount of that game against Kentucky, and I wasn't overly, impressed. Kentucky's not a very good team, but at least they didn't lose to them, because last year they lost to them. So, but I guess it's kind of a thing where teams have to move up, because other teams aren't looking as good. So, I probably would only have, it's only a couple spot difference, so I don't really have a big thing with that. I think Tennessee should be higher, to be honest.
Yeah, Tennessee is probably a team that's going to end up continuing to move up, just based on how they've been playing. They've been good. Now we're going to go 21-25 here. Texas Tech gains 3 spots here. Michigan Wolverines drop 8 spots after their loss to Oklahoma. They're now at 22. USF, the South Florida Bulls, go from unranked to number 23 after beating Boise State and UF. Arizona State drops 14 after their loss. They're at 24, and Georgia Tech, despite winning, has somehow dropped 3, and they are still in the top 25 at 25. Are you surprised about those final 5 spots there?
No, not really. I think USF should be higher. They probably have the 2 best wins in college football, I would imagine.
Yeah, they do.
And so I know it wasn't, a dominating win against Florida, but I mean, they still won the game
at the Swamp.
So
yeah, that's a big one for me. I want to ask you, because we asked Brandon and Mackenzie earlier in the show. Where do you think USF should land if they beat Miami? Do you think they should be a top 3 team in the nation?
I don't know if I can put them top 3, because even though, they'll have had the best wins, if you put them up against, I'd say even the top 4 teams, I don't know if they'd win, but I would definitely put them in the top 10.
Well, Miami's number 5. That's why I'm asking. Do you think they should? And number 30? I mean, I know 25 Boise's a little different. Florida's probably the big win, but Miami's number 5 right now. Do you think they should take Miami's 5? Okay, so instead of saying top 3, do you think they should take Miami's number at 5 if they win?
I'd probably put them at like 7.
I don't hate that. They still have to go.
I don't know if I could put them at 5. Just because how they kind of beat Florida, because I don't think Florida played their best game, which, don't get me wrong, USF did part of that. If USF had kind of won that game a little differently, I probably would have, but it probably depends on how they beat Miami. So if they have a pretty dominant effort against Miami, at Miami, then I wouldn't have a problem with them moving up to 5. This would be like I think it was 2007 when they were in the top 5, and then it all fell apart.
Yeah, and they do. For what it's worth, they don't have the hardest schedule after Miami, but they will have tough games against Memphis, and I believe they also play Navy, who Navy has looked good so far. But finishing through this, honorable mentions, we'll go through a couple of these because they were named on here. We have Auburn, BYU, Louisville, and SMU all receiving honorable mentions. Are you surprised that any of those teams got votes?
SMU, I am.
Really? Ooh,
why?
Why?
They completely fell apart. They should have won that game multiple times against Baylor. And they just couldn't finish it. And I think SMU kind of still, to me, has that like Big 12 kind of. I just don't believe in the defense.
Right.
So, that's my biggest worry with them.
Now, I'm going through some of these lists here. We can kind of see how these top 10s for the rest of the team ended up looking here. Are there any surprises? I guess we'll go through 1 through 11 for between Shane Barrett, Kyle Jones, myself, Brandyn Pokrass, and Cody Henderson on there. Are you surprised about anybody's top 10s listing on, or top 11, I guess I should say, on here?
I'm surprised LSU is so high. I mean, I have LSU at 7, but I don't know. I'm a little.
Can I ask you why you have LSU at 7?
So I know they beat Clemson, but we saw Clemson did not play well against Troy last week, and I don't think LSU played like the greatest game against Clemson. I think it was a little bit like both defenses played well, but I expected more out of LSU's offense, and I just. I know Texas lost to Ohio State, but I think in a game LSU and Texas, I would take Texas, and the other teams I just have looked better.
I don't necessarily hate that. I don't agree, because I think you got to play who's in front of you. I mean, we'll find out if Clemson's real or not really, really soon, because they're not. They don't necessarily have the easiest ACC schedule. But they've been a team that is on the bubble because they have started so poorly. I think next week against Syracuse, if they don't blow the doors off of Syracuse, I'm going to have to it's hard to justify them being a top 15 team. So I actually don't disagree there. Before we go for the rest, I do want to shout out Shane Barrett, who does cover Auburn for us. He did actually send in a little blurb, which I'll read very quickly, about the Auburn Tigers, whereas which are now the number 24 ranked Auburn Tigers and their AP poll. They host the in-state rival South Alabama for the first time ever going into week 3. Auburn looks to build off their wins against Baylor and Ball State with eyes on the Oklahoma game after their week 3 contest. Keys for this game is just Auburn remaining healthy at key positions and continuing to expand in the passing attack. Jackson Arnold has looked competent and did so last week, but he has areas to improve on. Hopefully he shows up this week based on the tape from a week ago. And his final score prediction is a 35-10 win against South Alabama, which honestly is kind of should be chalk. That shouldn't be a game that Auburn loses. Now, going through the rest of these lists here, we're going to go through about 11 to 22-ish as it cuts off at the bottom there. Any surprising numbers, rankings there for you that you see? I did have USF at 16. I did have them pretty high. I think you were the only one to have them as high as I did.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think so. Let me look.
It's not too. It's kind of. This is where it gets interesting because it's kind of. I don't want to say chalky, but there's a lot of the same teams being found here. You know what I mean?
I think yeah, I don't think anything's crazy. I had Louisville, I think, a little higher than other people, just because I think it was pretty impressive. Their win over James Madison, coming out in the second half and playing better. It would seem like Miller Moss played better that game. I think that the biggest thing for Louisville, for them competing in the ACC, is what are you going to get from Miller Moss? Sometimes he plays pretty well, and then sometimes, he doesn't look very good. So if Brom can kind of get him to be consistent, I could see Louisville really competing for the ACC.
That would be interesting. I know despite some Louisville fans thinking I hate Louisville, I actually don't, I promise. I just thought JMU should have won that game, and they probably should have. As you can see, I actually have Louisville on my list too at 21, so I preach it where I have to. I did not have Auburn, or actually, no, I did have Auburn on my list. You know what? Ignore half of what I say, but it's interesting enough seeing some of these other teams at the bottom of the list here. Are you surprised that USF? Oh, I'm not sure what happened there. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Are you surprised that USF was not found on some of these, the bottom half of these rankings?
Yes, that is surprising. Yeah, I mean, they definitely should be in the top 25.
Yeah, I completely agree. So that for everybody watching this, we did just a quick sweep. I don't think Brandon expected us to go through these power rankings because I didn't have it listed. So I just had to surprise.
I want to mention one other thing. I'm the only person that has Tennessee in the top 10.
All right, we're gonna exit that on that note because nobody wants to hear that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm still a little salty over the Syracuse loss there. As you
Which shows how I'm unbiased, because Tennessee is one of my top 5 hated college football teams. So
is it really?
I can put my bias aside and rank them high, just like Ohio State. I have them number 1.
I had Tennessee fairly high, if I'm not mistaken. I think I had them 12. So I think it's higher than what the consensus was, if I'm not mistaken.
That is not the top 10, though, sir.
Yeah, well, the consensus, they were 15, so I will take it. I was ahead of consensus on our consensus. But before we wrap up the show, Brandon, can you just let everybody know where they find you at on your social media?
Yes, on Twitter or X, you can find me at HeyB3. And also wanted to plug this because I forgot last week. The Haymaker, our gambling college football show, is on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Want to make sure you check that out. The parlays have missed by 1 leg both weeks. We started. I know. I thought, especially, I didn't see how Arizona State lost, and when I saw it, that super brutal. And then the Clemson one the week before, I had on my eggs in the basket with Clemson. But then we're also doing a league winners parlay where we take all the teams that we cover and do that. We actually didn't do horrible last week. We got 3 out of 5. UCLA and UNLV almost hit the over in the first half, and I just thought Colorado would score more against Delaware. So kudos to Delaware to keeping it a little closer than I thought it would be. So make sure you check out that show at 9 o'clock Eastern on Wednesdays.
Yeah, make sure you guys are checking it out. Props to Delaware and Coach Ryan Carty and Nick Minicucci and all those guys for their game against Colorado. They did look good. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you, Brandon.
No problem.
All right. And that is Brandon Hay at Hey B3, don't think I can't remember if he promoted himself on the Twitter there. That is at Hey HAYEB3 on Twitter/X. Make sure you guys are following him at the Haymaker Show 2. That will actually be posted through his Twitter, and it will also be posted through the YouTube channel on the League Winners and on the League Winners X channel. If you guys are listening to the show, tuning in late, make sure you guys listen back to the show. 2-hour show. We're going to 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern time. This is the League Winners. It's Thomas Christopher. Make sure you are hitting that like button. You are commenting. If you are seeing it in passing, we will get to the comments live on the show. You are not unheard. If you comment after the fact, I'll appreciate you, and I'll try to comment back to you as well. But most importantly, make sure you are sharing this video. Make sure you are subscribing to our channels, and make sure you are being part of the League Winner family. This is Thomas Christopher. We kind of fit everything before I want to get off this show, so I don't have too much to say. This week, I will be traveling to Syracuse on Friday night to see the game against the Colgate Raiders. We talked about that matchup a little bit earlier with Daniel Totora. You can find my game preview at the League Winners website. That is live now. We have a litany of other reporters going to multiple games this week. I will also be traveling Saturday morning. I'll be taking a 6 a.m. flight, and I will be heading to Florida to cover the Miami USF game, at least the first portion of that. And then I will be traveling, a stone's throw away at Miami at Pitbull Stadium to cover the Shula Bowl between Florida Atlantic and the Florida International Panthers. So if I appreciate everybody who's been watching the show up to this point. It is a long one. I will not lie, but hey, that's what we love doing here. I truly appreciate everybody taking the time out to listen to me yap. And now, before we get off the air, I just want to thank you, the viewer, and make sure you guys can find us at League Winners CF on X/Twitter. You can find the YouTube channel at www.com or www.youtube.com/@the League Winners, or you can find us on Instagram at the League Winners. And with that, this is Thomas Christopher, owner of the League Winners, and we are signing off.